Hello everyone, it is Jaden and welcome back to another video. And for this week's video, I thought that it would be a lot of fun to do 3 different Summerween related crafts. So let's get into it. Alright, so here's the sketch for the first craft, but after showing you all of that, I went to work actually making the little guy. I pulled out my pattern pieces before tracing them down on some white felt. This will be a little trick-or-treating manatee dressed up as a ghost, so I got to work cutting out, or first tracing and then cutting out his costume on some white felt. I used my favorite fabric scissors, which are actually my grandmother's, but I use them more than hers, so they're basically mine now. Just kidding. But I used those, and then with the white felt, I also cut out his nose as well as 2 little fins. I then pulled out some gray fleece that I had to just make the bottom half of the manatee, which was basically just his little tail, because that would be poking out from under the costume. And then I just cut them out after tracing it. I then pulled out this box of scrap felt that I had and found some black felt so I could cut out his little eyes. I decided to do really big round black eyes, so I just, like I said, got to work cutting them out and trying to make it as perfect as a circle as I could do. I then needed to make his little pail, so I pulled out some green felt and got to work sketching on a vaguely watermelon shaped. I then just cut that out and ended up trimming it up just to, again, get more of a watermelon-esque shape. After doing that, I pulled out an even darker green felt to make the little stripes of a watermelon. And I tried adding a little bit of like waviness to this little stripe just so it's not like completely straight. I did end up cutting it a little bit too long, but that's okay because I could just trim it down. Once I got all of the pieces cut out for this little watermelon pail, I got to work attaching them to the main big green piece with a little bit of fabric glue. I said this before, using fabric glue to hold down little pieces is like one of my favorite things to do as opposed to using pins. It's especially a lot easier when I do smaller like little details like the face of this jack-o'-lantern watermelon, which I did not film this, but as you can see I cut it out in a pretty pink color. I then got to work gluing down attaching the costume to the tail and then gluing down the eyes using my favorite, it's actually technically felt glue, but you know, same thing as fabric glue. I then added a little bit of glue to the back of the watermelon pail and I attached this little piece of purple felt just to look like candy that has been piled up in his pail. I then decided to use a black pipe cleaner to represent his little handle. I then, before like stitching the entire plushie together, I had to stitch on some little details, which included the nostrils of the manatee's nose. I did at first accidentally glue down this white piece before realizing that I needed to not do that because not only did I have to stitch on the nostrils, but along with stitching down the nose, I was going to fill it, as you can see I'm doing right now, just to give it a little bit more dimension. But thankfully I realized that before I got too far and pulled it up before, like I said, I got too far. Anyways, I continued stitching on all of the other little bits and pieces like the jack-o'-lantern pail. I then pulled out some beads that I had to stitch onto the purple part of the pail just so it looks like little pieces of candy that this little manatee has gotten while trick-or-treating. I thought it would just definitely add a little bit more detail and interest to this little guy. I then got to work stitching on his little fins, and I made it look like he was holding the little watermelon pail. And then after doing that, I just got to work stitching the entire plushie together. As you can see, I did end up stuffing his little fins again, just like the same thing I did with the nose, so stick out a little bit more and have a little bit more dimension and a little bit more interest. And I tend to do this with plushies that are holding something so their arms stick out more. But anyways, here is the finished little guy. I think he came out quite cute, but now it is time for the next craft. This craft is going to be painting this little metal ghost sign that I have. I sketched out 3 different designs. I did really like the one with the coconut drink. However, I ended up going for the kind of groovies one, groovy-esque ghost, just because it was calling to me for whatever reason. But I did sand down this little metal sign before covering it in many coats of gesso before getting to work sketching on the little sun or the little flower glasses, as well as the other flowers and peace signs. I did end up using an orange kohl erase pencil to do this, but I'm not sure how good of an idea that was because this color did tend to smear a lot and it was also a bit difficult to erase. But at that point, I was dedicated and I just had to keep using it. There was no point in just switching it now. But like I said, I got to work sketching on everything else. Besides doing the little flowers and peace signs, I also made sure to do 2 little cheeks, which is what the random little oval shapes are, because I just thought it would be really cute to give the ghost some little pink rosy cheeks. This is the second ghost sign that I am painting, but here's the colors I chose for this particular ghost, as well as a very long paintbrush. And at first I got to work doing the little glasses. I did end up changing the yellow color to one that was a little bit brighter because this one dried a bit too dark for my taste, but still very similar colors in the end. But like I just mentioned, this is the second ghost sign that I am painting. The very first one that I had done, I made look like a little gingerbread ghost, and I'll insert a picture right now. I do actually have a third sign that I need to paint eventually. I don't know what I'm going to put on it, but that's just something for future Jaden to worry about. And if you're curious where these signs came from, they came from Dollar Tree a couple of years ago, and my mom had bought them for me to craft with. And they just sat with some of my craft supplies for a while before I finally got to work actually using them. But after adding on the first layer for the glasses, I went to work adding on the first layer for the peace signs. All of these colors did end up needing multiple layers. As you can see, they were very thin and streaky. I do use cheaper paints, which tend to be a bit a bit more watery. However, I can't lie, I still love my cheap art supplies. And there's nothing wrong at all with using cheap art supplies. Literally, one of my favorite art supplies that I use is the cheapy little plastic watercolor pans that you can get at Michael's with all the different colors. No joke, one of my favorite art supplies of all time. But anyways, I got to work just darkening up all of the colors as well as painting on the mouth of this little guy. I also ended up dotting on some little yellow spots. I then ended up needing to clean up a lot of the designs because, as you can see, there is quite a bit of pencil that is showing. Again, this was something that also needed several coats. I don't know why it sounded like that when I said it, but like I said, several coats. It also ended up smearing a little bit, which was again a little annoying, but it's totally fine. And then after I cleaned everything up, I did end up going back again with some of the colors if I ended up messing up the shape of the design. But once that was all finished, I pulled out this pale yellow again and did the little centers of each flower. I then pulled out some matte varnish. I then got to work varnishing this little guy. I did several little coats, and once the front was finished, I ended up needing to do the back of the little ghost. I was originally going to keep the back white, but ended up doing this pale pink color that I used for the pink of the ghost cheeks. I then just painted all of that on, and then again I just varnished it with the same varnish that I used for the front, and again I did several coats. And here is the finished little groovy ghost. A little awkward trying to film showing y'all, but I think it came out quite cute. The last final craft is a tote bag design inspired by Camp Crystal Lake from Friday the 13th. So I got to work opening up Procreate on my iPad, and then I like to take pictures of my sketches that I do on my sketchbook and then kind of trace around them on my iPad on Procreate. I do turn down the opacity of each picture, and then I just got to work sketching everything out and cleaning everything out. As you can see, I did at first leave a gap between Jason's machete and the stick with the marshmallow on it, but I ended up changing that. You could also see I kept having to go back to Google just to reference Jason's mask, just to make sure I got it right. I then went through all of the different fonts that I have on my iPad just to find one that I would like for the words. But once that was finished, I put everything onto my laptop and then into Cricut. I did the words separately from the design just so I could center everything and make sure it was perfect. I then got to work making it. This is going to be iron on as I'm doing it onto a tote bag. When you use iron on vinyl, make sure you mirror it. You can also see the vinyl I used at first was red. I did end up changing it to white vinyl, which you'll see, but the process was entirely the same. I just ended up having to change to white vinyl because I used a different brand than I usually do, and unfortunately it cut all the way through to the vinyl, so it wasn't like one big sheet. But in the end, here's what this little guy ended up looking like. Unfortunately, Jason's mask did lose a few little dots, but in the end, I think it came out looking really fun. But anyways, that is the end of this video. Here's all 3 little crafts that I made. I really hope that you all enjoyed this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing day.